Okay, I think I'm gonna start. So this session is about writing quality code as a team. Oh, the keyword here is team and quality and code. Okay. So I'm Mateo, by the way. I work at Lalabat. I do Drupal development and all other technologies. This web stuff is what I like. I mean, when I stop working, I start doing other stuff related to web. And I think that most of you also feel this way because you're here, right? Okay, so this session is not about improving your code skills, your technical skills. You probably know about how to code, how to organize your code, how to, I know, maybe use object-oriented code with static methods to organize your repo for reusable business logic, or how to avoid some Drupalisms and use Drupal like a good tool when Drupal is not a good tool for that matter, integrating with other technologies. Like for instance, in Drupal 8 we are bringing in some Symfony components, Zend feeds. We are bringing in Gazelle and all other stuff. That is also a good thing to do. And this, I won't tell you about how we as Drupal community love learning programming patterns and what programming patterns I like and I think that are useful. So if you were looking for a session like that, this is not your session. So there's another session which is about responsive design that is all across the street. It's really cool. The guy who gives the talk is a close friend, and she is also really cool and good guys. But yeah, I don't think that anyone is leaving. So I will tell you that this is about teams and how I, in the teams that I organize with other people. Because I don't think that anyone here can do a whole project from beginning to end with no one involved. Because at least you have a client, right? And that makes a team of two. So I'm going to give you some background or some introduction on the teams that I usually am in. We do Drupal consultancy, but we also do development. So usually for the clients that I work, they are big clients that do big websites, and they have their own tech team. But sometimes they are not Drupal experts because they just moved to Drupal recently or for other reasons, because they're assembling a new team for the new project or whatever. So I usually go into that team along with other consultants from other web agencies, and I'm treated there like the guy who knows a bit about Drupal, right? Along with other people that also know about Drupal. But the thing that is always the same is that every team is different. Okay, so the thing that is the same is that they are different. Every team have their own culture. Some teams, they find it really easy to have fun, to post, I don't know, GIFs about cats or memes, or even slapping you in a GIF when your code is not perfect the first time. And other teams are more serious and they do GIFs only in a month or so. So everyone eventually everyone does have fun. But the team is always that matters. Because if you don't have a good team, you won't be able to deliver a quality product. So sometimes I feel like this, right? I get inserted in a place that I don't belong, and yeah, you can think that in some situations you know that one developer cannot be responsible for everything going wrong, right? For instance, that guy in the green t-shirt may have introduced a nasty bug, and you could be tempted to blame him and tell him off, or I don't know, maybe fire him. But the guy with the golden chains reviewed that code, tested that code locally, and even merged it. And you wouldn't blame a guy that could crash your skull with a hand, right? So according to Jim McCarthy, said, you can't have great software without a great team. And most software teams behave like dysfunctional families. Well, that picture looked like a dysfunctional family. I think that what Jim McCarthy means is that you need to care about the team members, right? You cannot have a good product without having social interaction between the members of your team. And by social interaction, I don't mean ending your days and going and, I don't know, having some beers with them. I also mean that. But I'm thinking about communication. And when you communicate, you need to know your strength. I mean, you can be a back-end developer, front-end developer, but maybe your strength is that you know all the requirements, or your strength is that you can make decisions because you own the product. So having your strength clear in your mind and being proactive at offering yourself and making yourself available is the way to go, because this will improve other people's code, right? Because you know about SaaS, right? You know how to structure a SaaS project. I don't. So I will probably ask you, because it's impossible that only the tasks that I do are in my comfort zone, right? So I'm gonna code some crap that you are gonna help me do better. And yeah, obviously you need to learn from other people's code. So let's talk a little bit about code. So some suggestions, and this is really simple, and this is all that there is in this session, right? You need to have a centralized place to talk about the problems that you need to solve, right? And that can be called an issue, or a user story, or a bug report, or whatever. But you need a tool where you describe the problem or the need that you have, and all the communication go in there. You cannot have a guy who doesn't care about this tracking system and starts an email thread that becomes a pile of emails that you cannot longer find the information unless you do Command F. I think that he said at some point, he said shit, or no. Wow. So these tools are really prepared for this stuff. So if you can find what people are saying about the thing, you're probably going to solve the problem better. Because you need to understand the problem, because the person who can describe the problem better is the most suited person to fix the problem, right? So that's one thing. Git flow, this is more codey, right? You need to follow Git flow. If you are writing on top of master, you're doing it wrong, right? I'm going to do a step back. You need to have Git or some version control system. Because if you don't, well, you're going to have problems in the future, right? Also, you need to test your code. And I cannot stress that enough. Well, I do. You need to test your code, okay? We'll talk about that later. And also deploy often. And that means, that doesn't mean that you have to do your first deploy and put the thing in production really quickly. I mean, when you do have your code in production, and you're doing enhancements, and you're doing sprints, you do a deploy every sprint, because having a big deploy is a lot of stress, and if something fails, then it's going to fail really bad, because it's going to fail in production. And this is how you could operate. I don't know if you can read that. Okay, so this is basic Git flow. Actually, this is not real, so this stuff may be wrong in some places. But you start in master, you branch off master, and one tip could be you add the ticket number. So if you say that I created a branch that says 445, make forums awesome. Okay, so that's the issue. So in Jira or GitHub or Redmine or whatever, I have a task that is making the forums awesome. And that task has an ID, and I put it there. And the reason behind that is because it's going to be really easy when in 3 months from now, I go and I see a code that I don't understand why the hell I did that this way, or why the hell another developer did the thing this way. You can do git blame, and then you will see what branch got merged. You will get that ID, you will go to Jira, and you will see, okay, so in all these comments, there's this guy that said, you need to do this. And this is the reason. So if you can trace that down, then you will be able to refactor that with the new requirements, or maybe delete the thing because this is no longer needed. But if you don't, then you will say, okay, I'm going to leave this here. I don't want to touch it because I don't know if I'm going to break anything if I remove it. And the code begins to become a spaghetti bowl that you cannot longer follow, right? I'm sure this sounds familiar, this thing of saying, I don't want to touch this. I don't know what it does. So you can save you some time by just adding the ticket number there. So you work on the branch, making the forums awesome. I'm making sure that I know what I need to do, and then I commit. First I do git add, and then the name of the file. But that's actually what I won't do, right? I won't do git add the name of the file, because this is a second tip. If you do git add -p, you will have an interactive screen that it will ask you, do you want to stash this chunk of code? And this is where you read your code, and you detect that you have, oh, this is a DPM, this is a debug statement, I don't want to do this. So you're statically reviewing the code that you're gonna send. Right? So if you use git add -p, you will force yourself to review your code. And this is important because we do a lot of things. And we add debug statements, we return early, so we don't have to do all the stuff that comes after the thing that we are interested. We need to make sure that we don't submit that. Right? So yeah, after adding our code, we submit to the remote repo. Hopefully we have a remote repo because we are working in a team and we need a place to merge all our code together. And after that, someone goes there and merges that to master, and eventually we go to master, we pull the code from master, and our master branch will have the changes that make the forums awesome. But in between, there's several things that happen, right? So after we submit the code to the repo, to the remote, we get something like this. And if you work with GitHub, you will be familiar with this screen. If you don't, well, you can start a public repo, or you can use GitLab or Bitbucket, and they all operate under the same principles, right? So there's the principle of a pull request. It's just a post with some code attached. So you will have a body, a description of what this code is going to do, or what you need to, whatever you want to say about this code. And also you will have comments, and you will have, well, several other niceties. You can link to exact lines of code and stuff. So it looks like this, right? Here I'm describing what the pull request does, and this is important. These are testing guidelines. So we said that another developer is going to test this, but they don't know anything about this thing, right? This issue that you're working. You need to tell them, go here and click this and see if this happens in your installation, your fresh installation. It's not where I've been working. I've been enabling modules and then disabling them, or I don't know, I've done lots of things, but I want to make sure that when I submit this code, this happens. So this is what you tell to your peer, all right, the person that is gonna review that. But before they review it, before they test it, they're gonna see what's going on with the code, right? And here, for this demo, I commented on my own code. But imagine that there's another person commenting on the code, right? So there's a comment in there about the implement hook menu alter, and another one with a troll face. And maybe sometimes there's someone that posted something that is actually smart, and they tell you, well, if we had blog posts awesome in the past, and now we're making forums awesome, then you need to change the helper function, right? To whatever, I don't know, user content menus awesome, or whatever. So they're going to spot things that you want, and they're going to tell you, you're going to change the code accordingly, you're going to push your changes again, and when it's ready, you're going to tell them, hey, this is ready to test. They're going to download the branch, resync the database, because maybe their database has changed, and in Drupal we have configuration in the database, and that is wrong, but we have configuration in the database. They're going to test it, spend a lot of time doing that, but in the end, they will be merging the thing. So they become accountable for the code. And if you share that responsibility, that means tighten the groups, the links between the individuals, and we own the code as a team with all the consequences. And we are the ones that are interested that the thing that we are going to merge is up to our standards, is good, is not going to break, because we can be blamed. So some useful tools here are Drush, of course. You need to download the database from the, let's say, the development environment or the acceptance environment, depending on the case. It makes sense on both. You may need to rsync the files, or maybe you want to use file stage proxy to just hot link to the stage environment for your images. But yeah, use Drush. I mean, it's impossible not to use it. You can write your own Drush commands depending on the project, and that one, Debify, what it does, it obfuscates the email addresses for the users. It routes all your emails to be in a file, the temp directory. It does a lot of things. Enables Devo. Tells you not to pre-process JS, CSS. Well, having custom Drush commands. give you a boost on productivity. And another thing that is interesting is MySQL parallel, and this may not be as known as using Drush commands. This MySQL parallel can make your life easier when you have a huge database with a lot of content. When you import your database, it's going to be sequential. So you're going to start with whatever table is the first one. It's going to probably be something from Acquia, right? And at the end, it's going to be sessions or whatever. So it goes one table at a time. And this is slow, especially if you have an SSD drive, hard drive. You can spin this and make it faster by breaking your dump into smaller dumps, one dump per table, and then using one of these tools to import those tables at the same time. All right? This may have some considerations about consistency in the database, but we can talk about that later. Right? Another useful tool is Hub. Hub is a command line utility written by GitHub that will allow you to do things really easily, like do hub checkout and then the link of the pull request, and that will go fetch from the person that submitted the pull request, make a branch on your local, and all in one command. And there are lots of other tools, like creating a GitHub issue from the command line. If you're into that stuff, that can be cool. Meme GIFs. Of course, you need to find your GIFs about raccoons and about cats or whatever you're into. Google Hangouts well, I don't know if you noticed, but it's the only thing that is bold in the whole presentation is because you're going to spend a lot of time in Google Hangouts, especially if you're like me, that I work from home remotely, right? And I need to communicate with people across the globe. And we said that communication is the most important thing. And lastly, the pull request builder. And this is something that we built in Lullabot. And it's proven to be super helpful. And this has been published. There is something in somewhere in a blog post, and what this does is, you remember how the person that is going to test your code had to download the branch, resync the database, run DB updates, and then revert all the features, and then do all that work. So why not have a robot do that for you and create a virtual environment that has only the changes in that pull request? And you just submit the code, and this happens, right? An environment gets created that is called QA whatever, blah, blah, blah. You click there, you test whatever they ask you, and you go count money because you saved a lot of time there. Okay? The only thing that you need to do is to tear down the environment, because you are going to have a lot of Drupal installations if you don't remove these environments. But this concept is really simple, and it's proven to save a lot of time. And if you're worried about, well, yeah, this is cool, but reality in most cases says that you need to be quick about it, okay? Submit the code, merge it, and do the next thing, because this has to be on time. Well, this can help doing that. You just set it up and test only the things that are in that ticket. Right, so it's important, as we said, to test the code, and we're going to do it 4 times. You're going to be the first person, because if you don't test it, right, you don't know what you wrote. If you don't test it, it doesn't work, right? Then another dev reviews your code and tests it in your local environment or in the pull request builder. that, by the way, generates a comment in the GitHub pull request saying, hey, this environment is ready, because this is not instantaneous yet. It's going to be instantaneous in the future. But you will also need QA to review your story, right? And this ideally will be a person that doesn't know anything about coding, that only knows about Jira. They can open a Jira ticket and read what you need to accomplish from a product perspective, and they're going to go to, let's say, the acceptance environment, click around, and say, okay, I can see how this was accomplished, and say, this is good to go. And when you have tested several user stories, you're going to need to do the last test, which is a smoke test or a regression test. Because sometimes when we code, we fix one thing or we do one new thing, but we break another, completely separate. And QA is not going to look for that other thing when they're looking for the one thing that you did, right? So from time to time, they need to do a click through all the site and try to detect the most important parts if there's something broken. And if they do it often, they will know, okay, this was working when we did the last test, and this broken now. So in between, we deployed these stories. So one of these stories is responsible for this regression. They're not going to say what story, right? They're not even going to say one of these stories is responsible for the regression, but you can ask them, when was the last time that you tested? And you can derive that information from their answer. So as I said, it's cheaper doing this than not doing it, right? Because there's no such thing as quick and dirty. There's only dirty, and it introduces multiple bugs that you're going to go and fix again. And then it's not just removing a column, right? Because you added an extra one, for instance. It's all the process that you have to do to remove a column once it has been introduced. Because introducing a bug is easy, but debugging is really hard. So Brian Kernighan said that debugging is twice as hard as writing the code in the first place. Therefore, if you write the code as cleverly as possible, you are, by definition, not smart enough to debug it. I like the quote. I mean, it means that debugging is hard. The other one also says that debugging is hard, and it pays back doing the things right the first time. Because if you have to spend the whole week debugging the code from Monday, then it's not worth it. And by the way, if you are going to debug ever, make sure that you don't do DPMs everywhere. Maybe sometimes it makes sense, like a quick thing, but install a step-by-step debugger. Okay, one important note to what I said about communication is be smart about it. I mean, you don't need me to tell you this, but sometimes you will try not to hurt another person's feelings, and you have to trust that the other person is smart enough to know that you're working, right? And you actually have to ask them to be nitpicky with your code, to try to tell you, this indentation is not quite right. That is a good thing, actually, because you want consistency across your code. So try to ask the other people to tell you everything from start, because if you have to do a change and then they say, no, it's not quite, well, do whatever you want, but I would do this, right? This will waste your time. Another thing is, while you're coding, write lots of meaningful comments. Try to explain yourself. Think about the person that is reviewing your code while you're writing it. that will save you some time now in the future, and your code base will be better. So why not doing it? Also, using long and meaningful variable names is also advisable, since there's people that say that don't write comments, write good names. This is a trend, but using things like my variable is called data or context. That doesn't give you much information, right? Or node. What is node? Well, sometimes it makes sense to call a variable node. Sometimes it makes sense to call it article. Sometimes it makes sense to call it article referenced in the published version of the node. Why not? It's just text, and you probably have some fancy editor that auto-completes the variable name, so you will only have to type it once. And yeah, the last one is the important. Update the code after you make changes, because in the code that we submitted to make the forms awesome, we did this, right? We declared our hook menu. This code doesn't make sense, by the way. We declared our hook menu, and then we processed it here in the same function that we were using before, because it's completely reusable. But here there are some problems. The first one is that after we do this, the comment is wrong. So a third person coming here and reading this, it's going to say, wait, no, I don't understand, because it says here that it only applies for menu item for blocks. And this is processing all the items. This is wrong. I'm going to correct this. And they are going to add something here that only applies to blocks. And you will have a regression after that. Right? Then there's the function name that we said before. The function name is wrong, so it's misleading. And you need to have good names in order for other people to reuse your code, and you don't have duplication of code, and then the code is better if you don't have duplications, right? And well, look at that. There was something legacy that we detected. This was there from, I don't know, 2 months ago. Well, go and correct it if you spot it. It does. You shouldn't care if this isn't the scope of the ticket or not, but you should try to make your code base better. Martin Golding said that you should always code as if the guy who ends maintaining your code will be a violent psychopath who knows where you live. And sometimes that may even be true, okay? And it's the guy that you least expect. So the last thing that I wanted to tell is deploy often, right? But I think I already told you about that. You want to deploy the smallest thing possible, because that is the smallest thing that can break in production. And if things break in production, grown adults are going to start crying, right? And that's very sad. A word about automated testing. I didn't say anything about automated testing in this session, but yeah, I assume that you're writing tests and you're doing all that. And if you don't, well, it's okay sometimes not to write tests, but this is completely separate of automated testing. You will need to do this even though you have automated tests, because at this moment, 2014, we are still smarter than the tests that we write, right? So we know how to test our code. Lastly, this is the last slide. This is the journey of your code. So your code is born in your local environment. You send it to GitHub. You create a PR. Someone takes that code, reads it, tries to find the smallest possible error, being the comment is not explicit enough, I would change this function name, or why don't we move this to a class and we load it, we lazy load it. I know, lots of different comments. Then they test it locally. They say, okay, this is good to go. This is as good as it would be if it was written by me. And it's merged in the development environment. If you do automated deploys using Jenkins or something like that, you apply everything live in the development environment. If you don't, then you need to deploy those changes to the development environment, and then you move it from development to stage, and the people that's going to sign this off, the production team, that is going to say, okay, this is the thing that we want to put in production because this adds value to the site, is okay. And finally, you deploy to production, and you do this for every sprint. So that's it. Do you have any question? Do you want to share any experience? Do you do things completely different?
Hello. In our company, we use, for code reviews, we use Garrett. Gives us some advantages like automatic code merging and updating to the master branch or something. Have you considered that, or instead of pull requests? Pull requests were so kind of simple for us.
Yeah, there's always a fancier tool. The thing is that I'm not free to choose what tool I use. So the client needs to be comfortable with the tool. And if you always work in the same team, then you can educate your team to use these more advanced tools that will save you some time. So yeah, I will be all in favor of using any tool that saves me time, because I like my time.
Okay.
Hi. I have these issues in my work too, and I understand when the sprint and you have dozens of tasks, and you're a team, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members, each one has 10, 11 tasks. I have found two difficulties. One is when your site scales and you can always automate the creation of development environments, but it will be some point that it will be more than an hour to make it create. Maybe it's not SSD, the SQL, maybe you don't chunk it into pieces, maybe it's something else. If you test every issue and there are 40 or 50 per sprint, each one takes 1 hour, and this work then becomes very asynchronous. And then you have to merge commits per commits, one after another, without conflicts. What are the workarounds on this, maybe? And the other one is when you branch per issue, and you want, this is actually connected, that you want to have a demo environment, so somebody can see it without having to check your dev environment, but something plain, it's the same. If you want to have a demo site for its task, I think it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, so about the first question, I work for a remote company, and I'm in a completely different time zone. So being asynchronous for me is not really a problem, being asynchronous in communication. And also, yeah, you said that sometimes this doesn't apply because it introduces a lot of overhead, right? But you have 40-something stories per sprint, right? how many regressions you have. If you don't have any regression without testing this, without testing every issue, then you don't need to test everything. But if you find that you're having regressions, and if you find that the quality of your code base is degrading every day, maybe not every day, but you realize that, wow, this module has become really complex, then maybe you need to invest those many hours. I know it's kind of I understand where you're going, but it's kind of a decision that you need to make. Maybe you need to invest some time now to save you time from the future, but I understand that it's hard to value the time that you save in the future because you don't know what's that time. So yeah, it's one of those kind of things. I don't know if I answered your question though. More or less. Maybe come later and we talk about it.
Okay. Hi, Mateo. I want to share with you a bit of my experience on my team. I'm working for a German company. I'm working from Spain, of course. And as a team, we have always to deliver small tickets. That means 2-3 days, not so much more, because we try to split that in user histories. But always we ask for a review, for a peer review. It's something that we didn't do before. And we started to do it since 3-4 months ago. And I can say it's really nice, because you develop your ticket, you test it manually, and then you can say, okay, I can get to the QA and it's fine. If the QA finds something, I can fix that. But if somebody else can do a peer review of your code, it's very nice, because you realize about how other person will do the same work. The only thing I'm not quite sure is that you do a pull request to ask to somebody to review. In my case, what I do is, together with another person, I do the review. Not only to, please take a look on this. No, it's something like, hey, come with me and you do the review. If you don't understand something that I'm doing, I can explain you. I don't know if it's better than your approach, but right now it works for me really fine, because sometimes it's something like the other person who needs to review your code needs to know what you were doing. Of course, he can take a look on your ticket, but I think it's much better if you, as a first person who developed the code, can explain to him what you try to do.
Yeah. So the thing that you try to, or at least that I understood from this, is that you started doing peer reviews, not because your code wasn't working, because it was working before, but with peer reviews is working, and it's a better code, and it's going to be easier to maintain in the future, and such and such. So about the second part of doing the peer review with the person that initially wrote the code, I think that is super cool. It may have a drawback somewhere in there, because you're kind of walking with him and you're giving them your mindset on the problem, and introducing that may, I don't know, introduce some bias on how they will respond. But I think that it's a good thing. In our case, we are very asynchronous, and when I have time for doing peer reviews, maybe the other person is sleeping or doing another task or whatever. So this is a viable way of doing this, and this is perfectly fine.
So I'd like to add something on top of that. I mean, if it works for you, then great, just go ahead, keep on using it. But one of the benefits I've seen from doing asynchronous peer reviews is that, for example, if you create a pull request in GitHub, everyone in the team that has commit access will get an email notification about that pull request. So when it gets to the point that one is reviewing your code, and for example, it starts typing comments like, hey, we could use this other function, everyone gets notified as well. So sometimes we end up having discussions because, for example, I would review your code and say, we got this method here, you could use this one instead, and then someone else will come in and say, well, but you know, we should refactor this because this method is not really useful. So at the end, everyone is learning. As on the opposite, if you show your code to someone else, that doesn't get written anywhere. So just you and the other peer are benefiting from learning. While the other way, if everyone is active on learning those notifications, everyone is learning and everyone is sharing the same code base and the same knowledge.
So I think this, just to finalize that, I think this is just in line with what I said of every team is different, every team culture is different. And yeah, do what Juanvi said. He spends more time peer reviewing than doing actual code.
Yeah, in my case, is something like I work on a product and it's a bit complex. So, for example, I will not do a review of the Erlang part, for sure. But I do review of the Drupal part. So as we are three Drupal developers, we try to not to be always the same person who do the review. We try to, as Juanpi said, we try to share the knowledge of it. But I think, as you said, it's something that works for us because we have the same time frame as Germany, so it's easier.
Yeah.
So I think both of them are fine, as you said.
More questions? We have 5 minutes, have time.
I have a piece of fruit for the last question. No, it's just to eat.
Piece of food and 1 Red Bull.
Hi. Well, I'd like to share my experience too, and I'd like to talk about your experience and everyone's experience. Because, well, first of all, let me make a little introduction. I'm working right now in a big project with 2 Scrum teams working together, a quality team. It is 13 people, okay? And my experience after 1 year of continuous integration is that, well, we have releases, and for every user story we have test cases. We need to implement them, and what I find at the end is that we are not doing unit testing versus integration testing, but we are using integration testing, Selenium, okay? It's a Drupal front end with a lot of back end and services and somehow. So what we do at the end is test, but test or from integration testing point of view, Selenium, and when we can, for example, if we use a backend functionality, like, I don't know, bulk upload, something like that, we use PHP unit, but at the end, we don't have that separation. And we talk about a lot about that, and what we find is that the developer has not enough time to make unit testing and then to participate in the integration testing, because they have to implement also the testing, okay? QA team make the page object and all the environment, but at the end the developer. And we talk about this, and we think it is a problem, but we don't know how to get out from, you know, that way. And well, we'd like to have enough time, but at the end we have to make the develop, and then we have to make the integration testing, and we'd like to do unit testing, but we can't. So I don't know if you have experience about that. If your developer is the person who made, if you are the person who made the test, or you have an external QA team that may implement the test, and the developer do anything but receive defects, or I don't know.
Yeah, I've been in project where the workflow of the project was manual testing and automated testing, and the way we chose which ones were going into automated testing, it was more a product decision, because when you have to write tests, I don't want to be an integrist. I mean, do the test that you need, because writing tests is writing code. Code has bugs. Code has to be tested. You cannot write tests for your test. That doesn't make sense. Or yes, I don't know. But you have to decide and come down to the earth and say, okay, we have this time. How are we going to spend it? And sometimes it's, okay, when we test everything, we always go and do this and this and this. And we spend a lot of time, and it's a very simple task. So why not do Selenium for that? And the other parts maybe are not suited for this kind of tests and cannot be tested this easily. So yeah, you can do automated testing and manual testing at the same time, and there's no problem about that. It will depend on the project, I'm sure. I don't know.
From your experience, is the developer who implement the test case, or is a mix between developer and QA, or is just QA?
Yeah, the developer should be the one that's responsible of writing the tests. QA should be only responsible to make sure that what's going to be on production is okay. They shouldn't be writing code. They shouldn't even have the access to the code.
Testing code? I mean, testing...
Testing by clicking or by putting some...
Our QA team, internal QA team, because, okay, we have to at the end, the QA team is the client QA team. That is huge. But we have an internal one in our team for 13 people. We have 3 people, okay, dedicated just to that. And they made the acceptance test, they define it, they close it with the client, and then they make the environment, page objects and somehow, and Drupal people is write Java for Selenium, okay, because they wanted to do it in Java. It is quite easy, but at the end, I like that the developer is responsible about the functionality and about how to test that functionality. And when we present it to the client, what the developer do is to run the test in Selenium. So it is not just doing the functionality, but he runs the test. But on the other hand, we have less time for developing. And well, that is
it's always a problem to especially convince the client that we need to write tests. And for us, it has been really hard to, from the start, say, hey, we need to write tests, because the client wants the project as soon as possible into the live environment. So what we normally do is, when we get the feeling that it takes me too much to click around to verify that this release is stable, that's when we think, okay, so what's critical in this website? Okay, that's what we're gonna test. It's impossible, at least for me, to write unit testing in Drupal 7, because Drupal 7 is so coupled. It's function-based, so it's impossible. When we get to Drupal 8, the developer experience will let you write isolated components that you can unit test. But in Drupal 7, you can test some functions, but if you need to test for a function, that means that the function is really complex as well. You may want to refactor that in sub-functions, and then you don't need to do so much testing on those. Anyway, functional testing makes much more sense. We started with Behat and Mink, and we had some issues with it, and we moved on to Casper.js, which is great. And so we thought, okay, what's the critical areas of this site? The homepage, the editorial workflow, so we added tests for those. And we run them. Developers write them as part of the ticket whenever it's something critical and whenever we can, so we don't do it always. Sometimes we do the work and then we create a follow-up ticket, write test for this part of the logic, and then perhaps in the next sprint we'll write the actual tests. And somehow it works. I mean, by the way, I wrote an article on that on writing tests and all the thinking that we went through until we started using Casper.js. It's on the Lulabot blog. If you if you see the blog and look for Casper, you'll find it. It's like this plain version of why we started and how it went.
But yeah, I think that the developer should be responsible for writing their own tests in case you're doing automated tests. And if they don't have time, maybe
it's hard. At the end,
yeah.
It's hard because the client at the end don't want any defect. He wants always good quality, but at the other hand, he's always looking for new features at the same time. So we have to divide ourselves.
And some of them, they don't want to pay more for that. But yeah, if your developers don't have time, you're at the right place. I mean, you should hire.
But that is true. You sleep better if you have continuous integration with automatic testing. You sleep much better.
I don't know if we have any more time for last question.
I'm sorry, guys. It's interesting, but we must pass the next session. Thank you very much, Mateo.